Coogs house, 68-59. Houston holds off Iowa State. I'm catching my breath still, but I'm not sure how good to feel about it.
You are Locked On Coogs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Coogs, a podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth, this live post-game reaction show to Houston knocking off Iowa State 68-59, a score I would have been a lot more comfortable with about 24 hours ago. Again, this is Parker Ainsworth, Locked On Cougs. And Houston survived in this one is the only way to say it, 68-59. Now we'll get into this. I want to talk about the game itself, the reaction, game day, future atmosphere. We'll see how many episodes we get between now and Monday night's game as well. We got a lot to talk about with Houston Cougars men's basketball program. But keep the comments coming in today. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. More on that fun later, as always. But tell us what you're thinking this one. I see some very mixed comments. I guess I should tell Sammy hello because he's saying hello as well. But a lot of up and down roller coaster type of emotions in this one. If you join us on YouTube, thank you. Subscribe to the bell so you know we're live. If you're not, you listen to this after the fact, you want to be here live next time, do the same. Okay, 68-59. Not the best score given the circumstance. You're up by a lot at half. 12 points at halftime? And frankly, we're up by 15 for stretches of the first half. Things were clicking on all cylinders. The reason this game felt like not a great win, even though you beat a top 10 team by 9 points, is honestly because Iowa State came in missing two key players in Keyshawn Gilbert and Curtis Jones. They're two high scorers. Now, obviously, Jones comes in off the bench, which is a little bit different high score role. He's a high scorer in points per game because of the games he played in the absence of a couple other injured guys. But still, missing two of their key six-man rotation is not something that was going to work in Iowa State's favor, and they're coming into Fertitta, which also not supposed to work in their favor, and they played tough as nails. The respect, I think, between these two programs continues to grow every time they meet up, unless you're Cyclone Larry. Honestly, I think the truth is that you saw that defensive effort coming out of this Iowa State team, and really they were kind of missing that finesse on offense. Now, I did think going into the game, Houston could beat a fully healthy Iowa State team. I talked about that on my show for Friday and things like that. I talked about with Nick on our show, our crossover show for Thursday. What I did not anticipate, I don't think, is the amount of turnovers. My immediate gut reaction from this one is how did Houston manage to win a game with 17 turnovers? And as good as Curtis Jones is, as good as Keyshawn Gilbert is for the Iowa State Cyclones, a lot of those turnovers felt self-inflicted because they were self-inflicted. Getting doubled on coming off of a high screen roll for a guy like Miles Susan is not supposed to be anything too crazy, difficult, or different from what they typically go through. But Uzan, who had gone the previous 5 games, just turnovers for the span of 5 games, had 4 turnovers in this one and just 1 assist. The guy's been an all Big 12 caliber point guard for a lot of the season and really struggled keeping the basketball in the right team's hands in this one. Ultimately, if I were diagnosing things and looking like in my own coaching career, what we would do, I think that the kind of trouble Houston had coming off of screens, spinning the ball a lot for long possessions and passing and stuff like that. Again, 17 turnovers, by far and away their highest turnover number on the season. I think that's why you saw so much more space and pace isolation ball late in the game in this one, because it's a lot harder to turn the ball over when one guy holds it. Now, you still saw a few of those. I mean, say that didn't happen at all, but I think that's kind of why it felt like they went to that. Iowa State defense, again, admittedly, missing a starter, missing their 6th man as well. Really, really impressive. Altenberger bursting out of his shirt, quite literally, with defensive prowess. Great program they got going. But man, oh man, can we talk some about LJ Cryer? When it came time to put the game away, he seemed to be like more or less the only Coug willing to do it. The Cougs played phenomenally through him, played great defense afterwards, right? Really, what was funny was Cryer was kind of the only thing working on offense, finding ways to get him in space, right? But he also kind of felt like the weak link on defense a couple different times. They found ways to get him in the post and stuff like that. Carrera had 28 points, 5 of 7 from behind the arc. You heard that right. 5 of 7 from behind the arc. A lot of those contested step backs and things like that. Again, 28 points. His career high is 30. He's hit it twice, once at Baylor, once at Houston. Almost to that mark. And had this game gone a little bit longer, he probably breaks it. He's, again, finding ways to get him into space was the only kind of effective turnover-free version of this offense. He himself had 2 turnovers, but that's actually the low for Houston starting backcourt players in this one, right? And so really, really impressive outing from him. I think my favorite shot from him was a late floater. They closed out on him tight. You had Milos trying to flare out to pull the defense with him, and he attacks the lane, gets downhill at the nail, and kind of has like a little like hesitation dribble where he like shakes like with the defender on his back, and it looks like he's going to try and pull a step back again. He goes to a floater, gets the contact, and one. I really like that kind of aggression out of him. It put him on the line, added the 3rd point that way, and effectively, I guess I want to say that nailed the game, sealed it shut. The real dagger play was after getting doubled on a screen. Uzen comes off flat, down the line on the screen, hits it back to a release valve, Emmanuel Sharp, who basically takes one full-length dribble up and shoots it from about 34 feet, 33 feet to put the icing on this one. And that kind of shooting, obviously Houston shot 58.8% from 3, 10 of 17. That's, I guess, the story of the offense in this one that went well. But ultimately, what you got to do when you go back in the film room tomorrow or tonight even, because it's an early game for Houston, they got to turn around and play on Monday. I bet they do some, I mean, maybe it's individual. It might not be organized, but some stuff tonight is finding ways to keep from turning the ball over the next time you play these guys, because you're going to see them again in the Big 12 tournament for sure. Further, you're going to see another great defensive effort both on Monday and then just down the line, whether it's in the Sweet 16 or whatever. Houston comes out on top, and I would always rather learn those lessons from a win. Got a bunch of comments flowing in here. Kenneth Cole asked, what are they doing? I imagine this was from during the game, Ken, but they end up winning, I guess. Good game. Impressed my Iowa State here. Fighting down Jones and Gilbert, gave up 10 threes and was still a game at the end until Houston pulled away. Adrian, longtime listener, does not feel great about this win. However, a win is a win in this league. I think that's kind of where I'm at too, Adrian. Allen points out the offense was horrid today. Jordan points out that LJ and to some degree Uzan saved us today. Not the best showing, but won overall. A couple different things here. What happened to the bench at Stats Chew? You had a decent amount of minutes coming in off your bench, guys, your bench trio here, but just 4 total points. I gotta be honest. It felt like Francis was a little hectic and chaotic energy out of him today, which was good on defense, not so great on offense. Malik Wilson just oversized. His matchup was kind of frequently a 6'6", 6'8" guy. Not his best offensive day on that output. Terrence Arsenault, I thought had some decent moments in the game, grown man rebound down the stretch and stuff like that. But I felt like he was like lasered in on defending guys when he came in. Not as big of an offensive focus out of Terrence today. But the next time you see these guys, you're going to need more out of that group. I imagine you see them put in a little bit different spots, given that Iowa State should look a little bit different next time you see them. But Crabtree or Crab TR 77, who is frequently commenting. I should learn how to pronounce that better. But he says, really impressed Iowa State's defensive principles and concepts. Didn't matter who was in the court for them. They caused University of Houston problems. Give them credit. I don't think anyone in the Houston building would not give that team credit. These two teams have a lot of respect for each other. Also, Berger said as much. Sampson has said as much. These guys coach a very similar style of basketball, right? And frankly, that's why it kind of doesn't matter who's in Iowa State jersey. Remember a couple years back when Sasser and Sharp both missed the second half of the season or more with injuries, and Houston still won a deep run at the Elite Eight, right? Like, it didn't matter who was in the Houston Cougar jersey that year. It kind of feels like Iowa State's the same way, right? It doesn't really matter who they roll out there. And credit to them for that. Culture respects culture, game respect game. That feels very, very similar. A couple other things across here. Joe Mendez says, what a day for Coug Nation. And I'll get to that part in the third segment. First, everybody showing up for the College GameDay, then being, I would say, in a great game. Great game. And I want to talk about why it felt maybe less than great at times, but is a great result overall, as well as what to expect coming forward and stuff like that. But first, today's show is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. When the game ticks off, NBA action, getting back after the All-Star break and things like that. There's no better place to get in on that action than with FanDuel. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. Even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in on the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature myself. You get every moment gets more exciting. App super easy to use. Get paid instantly when the game is over, right? Or if I guess a prop bet hits, you get paid shortly thereafter when the prop bet hits. Right now, new FanDuel customers can bet $150 back in bonus bets if your first $5 bet hits. If it's FanDuel.com to join today, that's FanDuel.com to join. Get your shot and join the party. Get $150 back in bonus bets if that first $5 bet hits. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Park Ranger Locked On Coogs here, looking at comments and reacting to Houston knocking off Iowa State 68-59. And it's hard to hate Iowa State because you see so much of Houston Cougar basketball and what they do and Otto Berger's doing, right? It's hard to hate on Iowa State because they were down 2 guards, and we've been in that situation in key games and seen the effort it takes and the culture take place and so on as recently as earlier this season. But generally speaking, right, it's a very respect-filled game. I look at the Iowa State team and see a lot of, kind of somewhere in this Houston Cougar process that they've built here. Otzelberger, I think, will get the job done there overall at Iowa State, right? The reason I feel like, even though LJ Cryer is a menace, as Crab points out here, right? The reason I feel like this game feels not as great as it could have, work with me here, is that you were up 15 with a chance to put the, twist the dagger, foot on the throat, whatever, early. Iowa State is down 2 of their 6-man rotation, including a guy that's, the 6-man started for a stretch of the season when Momcilovic was hurt. And you really felt like this was Houston's for the taking. You're the marquee time slot, right? That afternoon game is a big deal these Saturdays with the NBA going on and stuff like that, right? You had College GameDay on campus, and that went great. We're going to show off some pictures of signs we found online and the third segment. But really, you had everything kind of rolling, and then Iowa State made a run. And that run was predicated on 2 things. 1, static offense, getting complacent on offense, and then 2, turnovers. Now, I think those 2 things go together, and here's why. Right? The natural inclination when you're having trouble, like if I kick the ball to you and then you have a trouble with the turnover, a smart point guard starts to see that happens 2, 3 times. I'm not going to pass that guy the ball, right? We're not going to put him in that spot anymore, right? The problem is that 4 of these turnovers, 4 of the 17 came from that point guard, Miles Uzan. Again, he had 2 turnovers the previous 5 games. It feels like the key to comfortable wins for this team is for him to not have as many turnovers. But also, a key to the success of this team on offense is fully utilizing him within the offense as a scorer, right? And so I think that troubling pair on a game like this one, where he's going to have trouble keeping the ball in the right hands. Taman Lipsey did a great job of turning him over. Lipsey, I guess, is only credited with 2 steals. Joshua Jefferson, though, had 7, and some of those steals on that are, I feel like, effectively him poking the ball on a bad pass that Lipsey forces, but I digress. 7 steals from your starting power forward is a lot if you're Iowa State, right? You got to feel good about that if you're them. I feel like for the Houston Cougars, the reason it doesn't feel great is because everyone knows that the 2 high scorers for Iowa State were out, and you only win by 9. I would contest, though, that would change the shape of the game. Houston game planned for this as those 2 guys were playing. They were late scratches last night. We're recording Saturday right after the game. Those 2 guys were scratched last night, 6 o'clock Friday evening, as far as official kind of news and notes goes. And so if your whole week game plan since you played Arizona State on Tuesday has been to, shut down those 2 guys scoring, you've spent a lot of practice time to get ready for that too, right? And so that they're not there kind of shifts what you're doing. You kind of spend the first few minutes kind of feeling out what's going to come from the Cyclones. Derek Haroff says, just win, baby. And I think that's I think a great way to put this. I feel like that when the game shut down super close, I think it was a 1-point game at one point in the last 10 minutes there. It felt kind of like teetering on that edge of like what happened against Texas Tech, right? And while winning by 9 against Iowa State, I think some people are saying, oh, they should have won by more, should have won by this, should have won by that, should have done this, should have done that, and being super critical of things across the board. This is growth from that earlier Tech game, right? Toppin and McCaslin tossed. The game gets down tight like that in the last 10 minutes, and Houston ultimately can't pull that one out. Actually, Houston lost that one, I would argue, earlier than that in the first half, but that's not today's episode, right? And this one, you put your foot in the throat, they stormed back, put you in a little bit of foul trouble, turned you over a bunch of times, and you managed to still keep the hand on the proverbial head as if you're on the playground, keeping them at arm's distance, right? Keeping them swinging into the air, right, in the cartoony kind of way. And I think that that's the most impressive thing out of this one. And while it could have been more so, you could have just curb stomped these guys, all those kind of things, and you didn't. And I get why you wish you had. I also have to feel good about the parts of this, though, and that went well. Now, I will say that as I look at, I want to do a rewatch on some of the turnovers later because I think Uzang is credited with some that are his fault and doesn't get credit someone that might have been his fault. And so we'll see what the final number on that would be. You do play Tech Monday night, and I would be lying to you if I did not think that Houston, in terms of scheme this week and defensive coverages and things like that, had put in some stuff getting ready for Tech as well. And it's only natural when you know your opponent Monday night. It is a little bit less so because you've seen them before, and so it might just be review kind of things. But man, oh man, it's going to Lubbock Monday night after finishing with this one does feel a little bit shakier than if you just rocked this one, or if you'd have won by single digits, but those two guys from Iowa State had played. I think you'd feel really good about this one, frankly, right? Woe Burt's here points out that he loves Iowa State, massive Coogs fan. Played incredible at second half. The defense was suffocating. He's glad Crider decided to ball out tonight. I wish Robertson has been better in the paint. Roberts is getting to skate a little bit right now. 4 points, 2 assists, 6 rebounds. I feel like he may not have had as many touches as he did against some of the other close opponents Houston's had. Like, he had a lot more touches against Texas Tech or UCF or whatever, right? But honestly, I do kind of feel like the reason they stopped going to him as much was that post-entry was turning the ball over for Houston a lot, whether you want to put that on the post or on the guard throwing it in. And that's not great. Now, on the whole, I don't know how many times I can say on the whole, this does feel like the kind of day that in a week, 10 days, whatever, it's going to go down as a quad 1 win at home, right? And it's going to get Houston another game separated into Big 12 standings. All those things are going to be what matters. And I think that's what you got to continue to look at this as. It's not that Iowa State, I mean, ultimately, that's the first loss since Thanksgiving that Iowa State has had where Momcilovic played in the game, right? And he got hot in the second half. I believe all 16 of his points came in the second half. The guy is a matchup nightmare, and it was frankly a big deal when he decided to opt to come back to Iowa State instead of trying to go pro last year. Guy is really, really good. Houston held him to 4 14 to a 9 from 3, right? Like on the whole, he gets the line 6 times because Houston has trouble with him in the post, but you kind of live with, if you can hold Momcilovic to 16 and win this game, I think you kind of live with it. Now, other things that I don't know if I would feel great about, they got to find ways to get Terrence involved in the offense when he comes in with that second unit against bigger opponents, right? Against smaller opponents, he can kind of bully some stuff. He, pops open for 3 and all that kind of things. But, whether it's coming back from the injury still, again, we're only 14 months off of an Achilles injury. I wonder what the deal is there, but it felt like there are a lot of times where guys would drive his way and he was static. And I don't know that was necessarily his best answer there. Ultimately, they got it out. They got it out and win the game. And so, it's more easy. It's more fun, certainly, to be nitpicky on wins than nitpicky after close losses, right? As Crab points out here, right? 6 assists, 17 turnovers. You lose that game 9 times out of 10. Impressive win for Houston, given that stat line. I just can't believe they committed 17 turnovers. I think that's kind of where I'm at on this one. If I look at more individuals I want more out of, Tugler on the 4 fouls, right? We got to continue to work on that. There's only one really bad one. He closed out to monster double team with his hands down at his pocket instead of high, and there's nothing good coming out of putting them down at your pockets. The ball's not going to be down there. You're closing out high to hopefully take off passing lanes and shooting lanes and stuff like that. Not great. Now, LJ Cryer did put them on his back and take this game over. And again, with how many turnovers they had, they just got him the ball, got out of the way, because the more you pass, the more you cut, the more you set screens, the more turnovers they were committing. But this is the way that they won that game. And sometimes this year it's been Jawan Roberts. Sometimes this year it's been purely the defensive effort and rotations and stuff like that. This game, I think, who was it that pointed it out? Someone pointed out up here, Cyclones exploited mismatches. Cyclones start a bunch of guys over 6'8". Houston's tallest player is 6'8". Our tallest player healthy is 6'8". I guess McFarland could come in, but he's hurt, obviously. Hurt himself preseason. And so they found whatever mismatch they could and put that guy in the post. Sometimes that was Cryer. Sometimes that was Uzan. Honestly, sometimes it was Tugler. They are really, really big in that way. It makes them a really tough matchup. Now, it was College Game Day. It was a fun day for the program. And I said on Twitter, I still call it Twitter, sorry, but I said on Twitter that we would go look at some signs. So I want to keep reacting, look at some signs in a second. But first, one final word here. Parker Ainsworth, Locked On Coogs. You're talking about Houston's big win, 68-59, breaking it down live, reacting post-game, and kind of an up and down roller coaster set of emotions in me as I continue to think through and talk through this game. Obviously, you cannot look past LJ Cryer's 28-point performance. Really put the team on his back with his own little 8-point run when the game got tight to kind of keep Iowa State at an arm's distance. He shot 5 of 7 from behind the arc. Just unconscious out there in this one. I felt like every time he touched the ball, he was going to score. And I mean, he had 2 turnovers. He didn't play perfect. He only had 1 assist, but really it felt like, an iconic LJ Cryer game that, if they make a deep run this year and all of that, we'll be talking about for a long, long time. They had Texas Tech Monday. I'm still gathering thought. I can't even react to this. We got Texas Tech Monday. I'm still gathering thoughts and to get ready for that one. Then I did say, though, on Twitter, with this being a College Game Day blockbuster game, we would show some of these signs people take to College Game Day. So if you're new to the College Game Day experience, it's an ESPN show on Saturday morning to start with football and then now do it with basketball, where they do a live on-site show at a cool location for a big game that day. They picked this game at ESPN, and it's very common to show different, signs, paper signs to have up behind the guys as they're doing the show live there in your arena. And Houston fans, I should say, showed out. First and foremost, Houston and Big 12 signs were very popular. House of Samson was a big one to me. A couple different things here. I really liked this one. New Kings of UH, but new spelled N-U-W, the U becoming a U of H-W there. A couple other things. I'm trying to find my Keyshawn one here, but I have a few different pictures in this. What is this one? We had, Cougar taking down Cyclones. Houston has NASA. Iowa has Corn. How tight can shirts get, TJ, because of the Otzelberger tight shirts? Eggs, Benedict State. You can't spell lame state without Ames. I mentioned Big 12. I mentioned House of Samson. Who's Conference? Coogs Conference. Te quiero mucho, Kelvin Sampson. Love that one. A little bilingual action there. Big 12 run through said lot. Couple times there. What else we have here? All kinds of fun stuff. I can't find the Keyshawn Henderson one. Make him say with UH being the for Master P and all of that. Lots of fun with that one. I will say that the Keyshawn Henderson action being impressive to me is Willie Fritz seemed to find it there. They had Houston Cougar football players passing out donuts to the fan before games. And really, like, the seizing the moment out of Fritz there to walk over, be videotaped on camera on national TV, pointing at the sign with the high school, I guess junior rising senior behind him saying, "That's our guy." Within 24 hours of the Houston Cougar 5-star quarterback commit getting an offer from Alabama speaks volumes to what they're expecting out of that kid. I keep hearing that he really is staying loyal to Houston. I know people are saying, "Oh, just wait, oh, just wait, oh, just wait," and whatever, but people close. The kid is from Houston. The kid is coached by a guy that played for Fritz and Michael Bishop. Like, everyone is saying this guy is that dedicated and loyal to the program that said he's could be a quarterback and come to Houston first. And so I think that that's a big deal. Lots of time to dissect Houston and Tech, I guess. We're playing Monday night. As I get ready to wrap this one, I typically in the third segment talk about like what's coming next, what are the stakes of this win, etc. But going into this weekend, I said in Friday's show that this felt like, the 2 games in 3 days that are very March Madness, like, Sweet 16, Elite 8, Final Four finals kind of things, right? And with Iowa State being a little beat up, it might feel more like a Sweet 16, Elite 8 kind of 2 games in 3 days. But I think that's the point, is you get better with these kind of things. Like Eric here points out, the guards have to be better offensively. When the Cougs play higher ranked teams, turnovers and consistent scoring got to be better. Now, I would point out that Iowa State is ranked number 8. And while they were missing 2 of their first 6 guys, I guess, it's hard to be higher ranked than 8th, but I get what you're saying there, right? They did have a couple guys hurt, or one hurt and one sick or whatever, right? And I think that's kind of, as you're looking at this, the reason that it's a Sweet 16 Elite 8 game. You play Sweet 16 is theoretically not as tough an opponent as the Elite 8 would be, and you're going to have to play that second one on more tired legs. Houston's going to take this, I'm sure, watch some video and practice, and then get on a plane to Lubbock and go play Texas Tech in Lubbock on Monday in one of the hardest places to play, certainly in this conference, if not in America. Lubbock's a weird place where weird things happen. I think part of this reason is because it's so far away out in the middle of nowhere. And that, I think, is how you get ready for those long weekends in March, right? And I have to say that they passed the first test, the first part of that test. It might not have been one that's flying at colors as we wanted, given the circumstances. But had this been a healthy Iowa State team, we'd be talking about this like a Final Four championship game kind of matchup back and forth, one after the other. Instead, it feels more like, we said, Sweet 16 to an Elite 8. But passing this first test, getting on LJ Cryer's back and then turning around and getting ready to play a game on Monday is really, really important and impressive. And I think Joel says a bit well here. He says that interesting how Roberts was the guy that carried us earlier this season, and how Cryer and Uzan have been also been the go-tos more lately. Lots of weapons, and I think that makes this team really dangerous. We can get upset about single-digit wins or whatever, and whatever, yada yada yada, but ultimately they can get you a bunch of different ways. If you're a big team like Iowa State was, we're going to shoot over the top of you with Cryer, Uzan. I mean, Sharp had a very humane, like normal human day, regress back down to means or whatever, right? It could have easily been him that got hot in this one. If you're maybe out there on the guard and kind of vacating the paint, Robert's going to left hook you to death, right? Like those kinds of having a bunch of ways to do it, I think are really, really important for this team. On Monday, I imagine you're looking at a rowdy, raucous crowd. We'll break that down in at least one separate episode. I'm trying to get a hold of Chris Level up there at Tech to talk about a crossover action too, but short turnaround, both teams play today. I will say, though, that ultimately winning 69-58 is a good deal for these Houston Cougars. And again, I understand the offense got ugly there when it became just the LJ Cryer isolation show. I think that was by design. I don't hate it because it worked. Now, obviously, are there things to refine, things to tighten up, things to shape up? Absolutely. Like in every way possible. But you do it after a win, and that's always better. And this is Locked On Coogs, hosted by Parker Ainsworth. I'm going to be on Twitter a lot in the next 72 hours, getting ready for that Tech game as well. I got at least one more Tech game I want to watch. We also did some prep on them from beforehand. Going to try and get at least one episode out to you before the game on Monday morning. Then I'll be live Monday night to talk about it after the fact. Locked On Coogs remains your daily podcast for all things Houston Cougars and a proud member of the Locked On Podcast Network. That means your team every single day. If you want more college basketball action, you just cannot get enough. I imagine they're going to be talking about that one tonight with Leaf Dulene over at Locked On College Basketball. He does a great Saturday night breakdown of the whole day's worth of games. So go check out that one later or tomorrow morning on Sunday as well. Locked On Cougs Premier, again, Locked On Podcast Network. It means your team, our Houston Cougars, every single day. Go Cougs.